I want to share something quite interesting with you, and that is idol worship. You see, in the Old Testament, when we read it, we know what idols are. Idols are, like Hindus, for example, they worship idols of gold, silver, wood, animals, head of an elephant, head of a monkey, and a body of a human, and other strange humanoid-like beings with 19 arms or 10 arms and tongues sticking out and 3 heads. We see them as idols. Even in the Old Testament, it speaks about the golden calf, it speaks about Moloch, it speaks about Milcom, it speaks about Ashtaroth, it speaks about these different types of idols, and that these are molten images and images made from different earthly materials. So what we need to understand is that there are modern equivalents, because back in the Old Testament you could point out an idol, but now we are in the year 2025. Can you point out can you point out idols today? What are their modern day representative? Because demons change their appearance as time goes forward. They mold into other things. Because what to understand about worship speaks about surrender. So when they were worshipping the golden calf in the book of Exodus, the people or the children of Israel, they were surrendering themselves, prostrating themselves, giving themselves over to the golden calf. The same with Israel throughout their history in the Old Testament. There was times when most of the time, they were always giving themselves over to the Canaanite gods. They were giving themselves over to the gods of the Philistines. They were giving themselves over to Dagon. They were giving their lives over. They were serving these demons. They were praying to these idols to give them prosperity, praying to these idols that they would have good crops and they'll have prosperity. They were bowing down and serving and doing sacrifices to these idols. Now, when we come into 2025, where we are now, what is the modern day equivalent? See, for example, the Bible speaks about what's that god called? Moloch. Moloch is when they used to sacrifice their children to a molten calf, or a Moloch was a cow's head or a goat's head with a human body, I think it is. And they used to put their children on this idol and burn the child. That's what they used to do. There's a sacrifice, human sacrifice. They used to sacrifice their children to these demon gods. So what is the modern day equivalent? What is the modern day equivalent of people giving their children over to demons and sacrificing their cheap children to demons? What is the modern day equivalent? I let you think about that. And if you have done this in your life, don't worry, you've repented, God's forgiven you of that. Don't worry about it, God's forgiven you. But I'm trying to show you, or show us the modern day equivalent, because demons change form. So what happens is that some of us worship our jobs. Some of us worship our families. Some of us worship sports. They worship the things that they have. They worship their business. They worship their degrees. They worship their accolades. They worship the cups and the medals that they've won. They worship. They bow down. They place them first. They place all this importance upon it. But what you need to understand is that when it comes to idols, an idol is anything that you place before God. In other words, you worship. You're always on social media. You're on TikTok. You're on Instagram. You're on YouTube Shorts for 20 hours a day, 10 hours a day, 8 hours a day, and you've given yourself over to it by the amount of time you spend upon it or on it. You spend more time on social media than you spend in the presence of God. See, social media has become an idol. You spend more time at work than you do in the presence of God. You're always at work. Your work is as a talking point. You worship your job. You tell everybody about your job, how good it is, and your job has become an idol where you've placed so much emphasis upon it and no emphasis upon God. You've taken emphasis off God. Where God was number one, now God is number two. Your work is number one. It's all about your work. It's all about your degree. You've given yourself over to it. You've placed so much importance upon it that you no longer place importance upon the things of God. It's become an idol in your life, and these things need to be put back in their place. Is there anything wrong with going on? Is there anything wrong with going on social media? No. Is there anything wrong with being around your family and going to work and loving your job? No, there's nothing wrong with it. But it's when it becomes number one in your life. It's when you place emphasis upon it over God, where you give all your life over to it and give none of your life over to God, where your priorities are all mixed up. So what we need to do is that we need to examine our lives and see if we've given our lives over to something and not giving our life fully over to God, because things can get in the way. Like I said, friends, family can get in the way. Your finances can get in the way. Your plans that you have for the future can get in the way of you and your relationship with God. It needs to be torn down. It's becoming an idol in your life. It's raising itself up above the position where God is, and that can't be so. It cannot be in the first position. God has to be in the first position in your life. So you have to, or not just you, we need to look at our lives. We need to reassess our lives. We need to look at ourselves, look internally and check ourselves out to make sure that God is in our heart and that God has our heart fully and that our heart has not been given over to an idol. So let me leave it there. You guys understand what I'm speaking about, and I shall see you guys on the next video. Have a great day.